Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today, we're going to tackle a word that often gets, a lot of baggage, a lot of preconceived notions, jihad in Islam.
Yeah, jihad.
But,
Tough word.
but before anyone jumps to conclusions, thinking we're going to dissect like global conflict and all that, we're going in a totally different direction. We're going deeper, beyond those headlines you usually see, to explore the spiritual side of jihad
The spiritual side.
and how it can actually be a force for interfaith dialogue and peace.
And to guide us on this deep dive, we've got a really insightful academic paper by a professor at Georgetown University, Ori Z. Soltes.
Yeah.
And it's called Spiritual Jihad, with myself and for others, Islam within an Interfaith World. Quite a title.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paper, and what really struck me is how this deep dive isn't just about, getting Islam. It's about how we understand any religion, really,
Yeah.
through different, lenses and interpretations.
Right, it's like looking under the hood of our own belief systems, right?
Yeah, and seeing how they're shaped by all these different perspectives.
Exactly.
So to get us started, maybe we should just clarify what jihad actually means,
Right.
because I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from.
Sure. So it basically translates to struggle, like striving, exertion. And according to Soltes, there are like three main levels to it.
Okay, let's break this down. What's the first level?
So the first level is all about personal striving. It's that internal battle we all face, right? To become better versions of ourselves.
Hmm.
In Islam, this means becoming a better Muslim, which means, someone who's truly submitted to God's will.
So it's kind of like an internal battle against like our own flaws, our desires,
Absolutely.
constantly striving for spiritual growth.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not even just like an Islamic thing. It's a human thing, right? This idea that we're all struggling to, overcome our egos, our bad habits, to align with something bigger than ourselves.
Right, absolutely. It's like a universal human experience. So what about that second level of jihad? How does that differ?
So this is where it moves from the individual to the community, applying this struggle to the Ummah, the global Muslim community.
Okay, so it's like taking that inner commitment and then translating it into outward action that benefits the whole community.
You got it. So it involves things like promoting education, working for social justice, alleviating poverty and suffering, creating a supportive environment where everyone can flourish spiritually and materially.
And this is probably where that concept of dawah comes in, right? The invitation to Islam.
That's right. Dawah is often seen as a core part of this level of jihad. It's all about sharing the beauty and wisdom of Islam with others, not by force, but through, good deeds, dialogue, and just living those Islamic values in your life.
Okay, so we've got the personal level, the community level, and now the big one, the third level of jihad. How Muslims relate to the world beyond the Ummah. And this is where things get, well, maybe a little more complex.
Absolutely. This is the level that often gets, misunderstood, even twisted.
Right.
Soltis frames it as like the challenge of navigating a world full of different cultures, beliefs, values. And it raises this age-old question: how should Islam interact with those who hold different beliefs?
Is that the word of the sword question?
Right, Jack.
How should Islam be spread? So I'm guessing here, but interpretation probably plays a big role.
That's absolutely. Soltis has this amazing line in the paper. He says, religion is an edifice built of interpretations superimposed on the foundations of revelation.
Whoa. Okay, break that down for me.
Basically, he's saying that our understanding of any religion, like Islam, it's not fixed.
Yeah.
It's always evolving through how we interpret those foundational texts and teachings.
So it's like you have the Quran in Islam, and then you've got generations of scholars, thinkers, everyday people all wrestling with what it means to them, right?
Exactly. It's human nature to try to understand, to apply these teachings to our lives.
Right.
And that's where those different interpretations come from.
Yeah. So even within Islam, you don't have just one view on how to approach this third level of jihad. There are different schools of thought.
Oh, absolutely. You've got, the Sunni and Shia branches, which are like two main branches with different theological and legal frameworks.
Right. And maybe it'd be good, too, just for our listeners to understand that basic distinction between Sunni and Shia. Just quickly, what's the main difference?
Yeah, sure. So the main split goes all the way back to, who should succeed the Prophet Muhammad as the leader of the Muslim community. Sunnis believe it should have been one of the Prophet's close companions,
Yeah.
while Shias believe it should have stayed within the Prophet's family, specifically with his cousin and son-in-law Ali.
So that fundamental difference in belief led to these two distinct branches.
Exactly, with their own, interpretations, practices, and how they approach things like jihad.
Wow. So even something as basic as leadership, who's in charge, has these ripple effects throughout history.
Absolutely. And it's not just leadership. It's even things like the concept of sin, like
Wow.
what happens after we die, what hell is like. Even that gets interpreted differently.
Wait, seriously. Even something as like fundamental as sin and its consequences.
Yeah, Soltes talks about how even between like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you have different understandings of sin and the afterlife, even though they share those Abrahamic roots.
That's pretty mind-blowing. Okay, so we've got this concept of jihad as struggle, with different levels of like application and the understanding that interpretation is huge EE in shaping how it's all understood and practiced. But where do mystics fit into all of this?
Mystics, that's a great question. They sort of approach faith from a whole different angle,
Yeah.
Mystics, across like all sorts of faiths, they tend to focus on a very personal, experiential connection with the divine. Less about dogma, more about that direct experience of God, which can be hard to put into words.
They're like the spiritual adventurers, right? Pushing the boundaries of understanding through their own experience.
I like that, yeah. And because of that, because they're so focused on experience, they often have this unique ability to understand other faiths. They see that there are many paths to the divine, many ways to connect with that source of truth and love.
It's like they're saying, hey, we might be using different maps, but we're all trying to get to the same destination.
Correct.
And it's that shared journey, that pursuit
Yeah,
that connects us, even if our beliefs aren't identical.
you said it. And Soltes points out how mystics often push back against this idea that there's only one right way to understand God. They see that beauty of God reflected in all the diversity of creation, the many paths leading back to that source.
I love that. So are there any like specific mystics that Soltes mentions who really embody this idea of spiritual jihad and interfaith understanding?
He talks about two giants of Islamic mysticism, Ibn Arabi and Rumi. And their perspectives on spiritual jihad are, well, they're pretty amazing.
Okay, I've heard of Rumi, mostly from like his poetry,
Yeah.
which is just like, whoa.
Oh, it's powerful.
But Ibn Arabi, that's a new one for me. What makes him so special?
So Ibn Arabi, he had this amazing way of seeing God's presence in everything. He wrote this famous line, "My heart can take on any form. My creed is love. Wherever its caravan turns along the way, that is my belief, my faith." Like he literally saw the divine reflected in all of creation.
That's pretty powerful. It's like he's saying, instead of trying to force one belief system on everyone, why not embrace the like infinite ways to experience the divine?
Right. And then there's Rumi, the poet of love and unity, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
He famously said, "I go into the Muslim mosque and the Jewish synagogue and the Christian church, and I see one altar."
Wow.
He didn't subscribe to any one religion. Love was his doctrine.
So they're both saying that like the real jihad is about conquering, our own egos, our own limited perspectives, and embracing that interconnectedness of everything,
You got it.
both within and beyond our own faith tradition.
That's it. And Soltes takes these ideas even further by introducing a modern figure who's carrying on this legacy of love and service as a form of jihad.
Okay, hold on. Who are we talking about? This modern mystic.
His name is Fethullah Gulen.
Okay.
And he emphasizes this concept called hizmet, which is basically like altruistic service to humanity as a form of jihad. His teachings offer a really compelling way of looking at how to live out your faith in a way that benefits, well, everyone.
So instead of like fighting outward battles, the real battles are fought within. And then that manifests in like actions in service and love for others.
You got it. And his teachings stress this idea that loving God means loving all of God's creation, and that love has to manifest in a real way through service to all, no matter what their beliefs are.
That really echoes what we were just talking about with Ibn Arabi and Rumi.
Doesn't it?
That interconnectedness, that seeing the divine in everything.
It all ties together, and Gulen brings those mystical ideas down to earth, gives us a way to actually live them.
So what does that look like in practice? How does hizmet actually play out in the world?
Well, a good example is the hizmet movement, inspired by Gulen's teachings. They've started schools and educational projects in, like, over 170 countries. And it's not just about academics,
Right.
It's about fostering that spirit of service, compassion.
So they're raising up like a generation of ethical leaders
That's the goal.
committed to making the world a better place.
That's the idea.
It's like planting seeds of compassion for the future.
Exactly. And they do it by promoting interfaith dialogue, organizing all kinds of service projects, and really embodying this idea of Hoskuru, which Gulen talks about a lot.
Hold on, let's unpack that word for a second. Hoskaru. What is that exactly?
So it's similar to empathy, but like deeper. It's about really getting another person's perspective, even if it's totally different from your own. Trying to see the world through their eyes.
Stepping outside of your own bubble and embracing that whole crazy mess of human experience.
Exactly.
And when you approach service with that kind of like heart, it's not just about ticking boxes, right?
It's about genuine connection. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and coming together to build something better.
It's like taking that internal struggle of jihad and turning it outward, making it a force for positive change.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that makes me wonder, does Gulen talk about how Hizmet relates to like other things in modern life?
Like what?
Like, I don't know, science, technology, all that stuff.
He does. And actually, he sees Islam as a partner to science and progress, not an enemy. He believes we can use those things, those advances, to uplift everyone, solve some of the world's toughest problems.
So it's not this like faith versus science thing. It's more like they can work together.
Exactly. And for Gulen, it all comes back to service, to the idea of being a khalifa.
Okay, Khalifa, what does that mean?
In Islam, it means like steward or guardian.
Okay.
Gulen believes that our whole purpose as human beings is to be responsible caretakers of this planet, of all living things.
So it's like extending that circle of compassion outward to include all of creation.
Absolutely. It's about being mindful of our impact on the environment, promoting sustainability, leaving the world better than we found it. And for Gulen, this isn't just a suggestion, it's like a moral imperative.
I love that. This whole deep dive has taken us from this idea of jihad, which so many people misunderstand, to this beautiful vision of service, empathy, environmental stewardship.
It's quite a journey, isn't it?
It really is. And it shows how powerful interpretations can be, not just in how we understand our faith, but how we actually live it out in the world.
And speaking of living it out, maybe it's time to shift gears a little.
Okay.
And think about how all of these insights can apply to our own lives, even if we're not Muslim, even if we don't subscribe to any particular religion.
Yeah, that's a great transition.
Yeah.
Because we've covered a lot of ground, right? We've unpacked jihad, looked at Gulen's vision of Hizmet. But now the question is, what do we do with all of this? How do we make it relevant to our own lives, to our own personal journeys?
That is the question, isn't it? And honestly, I think Gulen would be thrilled for us to be asking it.
Right.
If Hizmet is a form of jihad, a struggle for good, then how can each of us contribute to making the world a better place? That's a challenge that goes beyond any one religion. It goes to the heart of what it means to be human.
What a challenge. It's like a call to action.
That is.
To really think about our own values, how much we care about others, and what we can bring to the table.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back in just a minute to really unpack this question, explore how we can all embrace that spirit of Hizmet in our own lives. Don't go anywhere. Oh, okay, we're back. And I don't know about you, but I'm still processing all that, the levels of jihad, the role of interpretation, and then those incredible insights from those mystics like Ibn Arabi and Rumi.
Yeah.
It's like they're really pushing us to like see beyond the surface, to see that divine spark in everyone, in everything.
It's a powerful way of looking at the world, and it really sets the stage for understanding Fethullah Gulen's teachings on Hizmet, which is, what we were getting into before the break.
Right. This whole concept of altruistic service, Hizmet, as a form of jihad. It's like so different from how jihad is usually portrayed,
Yeah, it turns things on their head, doesn't it?
It really does.
Gulen's basically saying that the truest jihad isn't about conquering other people. It's about conquering that ego, that selfish part of ourselves.
So it's not about imposing your beliefs on others. It's more about, like, living them out, showing your faith through your actions, through love and kindness.
You got it. Gulen's teachings really emphasize this. Loving God means loving everything God created. And that love has to show up in a real way, through service that benefits everyone, no matter what they believe.
And that ties in so well with what we were just talking about with Ibn Arabi and Rumi, right?
It does.
That whole sense of interconnectedness, of seeing the divine in all things.
Gulen takes those mystical insights and makes them practical. He gives us a way to live them out every day.
Okay, so how does that actually work? What does Hizmet look like in the real world?
Well, the Hizmet movement is a great example. It's inspired by Gulen's teachings. They've built schools, educational projects in over 170 countries. And their focus isn't just on, academics.
Yeah, more than that.
It's about raising ethical leaders, people committed to making a difference.
Wow. So it's like planting these seeds of compassion that, hopefully will grow into something bigger.
Exactly. And they do all of this through interfaith dialogue, social service projects, and this idea of Hasguru, which Gulen really emphasizes.
Oh, we got to talk about that word again. Hasguru. Is it like the same as empathy, or is it something more?
It's definitely similar, but it's deeper. It's about truly understanding someone else's point of view, even when it's totally different from your own, trying to see the world through their eyes.
Stepping outside of your own, limited perspective, right?
Exactly.
And getting into their shoes.
Yeah. And when you approach service with that kind of understanding, it's totally different. It's not about checking off a box. It's about genuine care.
It's about that human connection.
Right. Recognizing that even with our differences, we're all in this together, working towards something better.
So it's like taking that internal struggle, that jihad, and turning it outwards into a positive force in the world. That's inspiring. It makes me wonder, does Gulen talk about how this fits with, I don't know, science, technology, all that stuff?
Oh, definitely. Gulen doesn't see Islam as being against science or progress at all. Actually, quite the opposite. He believes those advancements can be used to help people, to solve big problems.
So it's not about choosing one or the other.
Not at all.
It's about finding ways for them to work together.
Exactly. For him, it all goes back to this idea of service, to the concept of being a khalifa.
Okay, Khalifa, remind me what that is again.
In Islam, it basically means steward or guardian. Gulen says that our purpose as humans is to be responsible caretakers of this planet, of everything on it.
So taking responsibility for the well-being of the whole world.
That's a good way to put it. It's about being aware of our impact on the environment, trying to live sustainably, and making things better for future generations. And this isn't just a nice idea. It's a core part of how Gulen understands our moral obligations.
I love how this deep dive has taken us on this journey. From unpacking jihad to this vision of service, empathy, taking care of the planet.
It's a journey, for sure.
It really highlights how important interpretations are. Not just in how we understand our faith, but in how we live our lives.
Absolutely. And speaking of living it out, maybe it's time to think about how all of this applies to us, even if we're not Muslim, even if we don't follow any particular religion.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've covered so much, from jihad to Gulen's Hizmet.
Lots to digest.
But the big question is, now what? How do we take all this wisdom and make it real in our own lives?
That's the key, isn't it? And I think Gulen would be happy to see us wrestling with that question. If Hizmet is a form of jihad, a striving for good, how can we each contribute to making the world a better place? That's a question that goes beyond any one belief system. It gets to the heart of what it means to be human.
It's a powerful question and a real call to action.
It is.
To think about what we value, how we treat others, and what we can offer the world.
Exactly.
We'll be back in a moment to dive into that very question. How can we all embrace that spirit of Hizmet even in our everyday lives? Stick with us. Welcome back to the deep dive. That last part really got me thinking. We've gone from this often misunderstood idea of jihad to Gulen's vision of Hizmet. Service as a spiritual struggle.
It's quite a shift, isn't it?
It is. It's like he's giving us a different way to think about making a positive impact on the world. And it's something that everyone can connect with, no matter what you believe.
Absolutely. It really challenges us to think about what service truly means and how we can make a difference. Because if Hizmet is a form of jihad, maybe we've all been engaging in this struggle for good without even realizing it.
I think you're right. It's so easy to get caught up in our own lives, focused on our own goals, our own problems. But Gulen's reminding us that there's something more, that we're all part of something bigger.
It's about seeing that interconnectedness, understanding that our actions have consequences, that they ripple outwards, and realizing that can be incredibly powerful. It means even small acts of kindness, small acts of service can make a difference.
So where do we start?
Ah.
How do we take this idea of Hizmet and like actually put it into practice? I mean, we're not all out there building schools like the Hizmet movement.
Right, you don't have to build a school to make a difference. Remember that concept of Hasguru we talked about?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to begin. It's about cultivating empathy, deep understanding, listening to people, really trying to see the world from their point of view.
So it's more than just like tolerating differences. It's about seeking them out,
Yes.
engaging with people who are different from us.
Challenging our own assumptions, our own biases,
Right.
expanding that circle of compassion to include people we might not normally connect with.
Breaking down those walls of us and them,
Exactly.
recognizing that we're all human at the end of the day.
That's it. And
Oh.
when service comes from that place, from that understanding, it becomes something totally different. It's not about obligation, it's about love.
That's beautiful. Okay, so once we've got that empathy, how do we turn it into action? Like,
Yeah.
what are some actual things we can do to live out that spirit of Hizmet?
Well, that's where things get really creative.
Yeah.
Because Hizmet can look like so many different things. It could be volunteering at a local soup kitchen, mentoring a young person,
Yeah.
donating to a cause you believe in. It could be speaking up against injustice, or even just, being a kind and compassionate presence in the lives of the people around you.
So it's not about like these huge gestures or being a hero or something. It's about finding ways to serve in our own little corners of the world, using our own skills, our own passions.
That's it. It's about asking yourself, how can I use what I'm good at to help others, to make my community better?
Right, like maybe you're a great listener, so you offer support to somebody who's having a hard time. Or maybe you're an artist and you use your talents to make your neighborhood more beautiful. Or maybe you're passionate about social justice, so you organize an event to raise awareness about an important issue.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, even small acts of service can have a ripple effect.
Right, like a smile, a kind word, just helping someone out. It can make their day, and, who knows where that positive energy goes from there.
It's like Mother Teresa said, we can do no great things, only small things with great love.
That's perfect. Yeah. And I think Gulen would agree. Hizmet isn't about getting something back. It's about aligning ourselves with a purpose that's bigger than ourselves, a purpose that's all about love and compassion.
And letting that guide our actions.
So there you have it, deep divers. We've gone from unpacking Jihad to exploring Hizmet.
Quite the journey.
We've encountered these amazing mystics like Ibn Arabi and Rumi, who remind us that love and unity, they go way beyond any one religion. And we've been challenged to embrace that spirit of Hizmet in our own lives, to serve others with love no matter what we believe.
It's been inspiring.
It really has. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this. What form will your Hizmet take? How will you contribute to making the world a better place? Think about it. Let that spirit of service be your guide. Until next time, keep diving deep.